If indeed we are here today to discuss the most fashionable topic of resilience and of the energy system, of course we also are very much acquainted that we still did not lose the objective of having Europe as a climate neutral continent by 2050. And having said this, it is very clear as well that this is going to be achieved with renewable energies. And the difficulty with renewable energy is that they are variable. And what does this mean? It means that they are variable in time and in space. So, of course, if we have sun now, we cannot have it so much next minute, so we need to understand time variation, but also it is one place and it might not be in another place. And this brings us here, and of course it provides a lot of food for thoughts, for policymakers and for science, and that's why we gather here. The EASAC has mentioned that to solve this problem we need to address three questions. And one of them is flexibility, as in the poll. The other one is storage, and the other one is the availability of grid. We need to look in two aspects. One is power system flexibility management, and this has to do with generation, including backup. Prosumers and distribution to consumers. So the prosumers, as we all know, is that each one of us in our home, if we have a solar panel, we are also producing electricity and delivering it. So, and of course, transmission and interconnections. So the energy is not flowing anymore in only one direction. So we have it flowing in different directions. And this leads to storage due to the variability, and of course to demand response. So what we want to say is to a consumer, please consume when the energy is mostly available from the renewable energies. And of course, this is very challenging. And then another problem that we have inherited from the past is that we also work in silos. So we need to break the silos, and this means sector coupling. So in order to make sector coupling, for example, we need to look at it. For example, a building can be a heat reservoir. I will come to that later on. But we also can look at fuels. So for example, sustainable hydrogen can bring the energy from the wind or the solar energy into the industry. So it is a conveyor that will bring a sector coupling, and electric vehicles. So electric vehicles can absorb energy, they do, but they can also bring energy back to our homes, for example. And this is the puzzle in which we are operating nowadays. Well, first things first, the best is not to spend energy. So energy efficiency should always be the priority. And energy efficiency, what it really means is that in order to fulfill our services, we spare less energy. It doesn't mean that we have less services provided by energy, and of course this is very important. Energy efficiency reduces energy demand, so it improves energy security. Energy efficiencies must precede accompanying electrification. So there is a question that also I remember from former Secretary of State in Portugal saying, well, if energy is renewable from the sun, will you never shut the light down? Of course, you need to shut the light down. And energy efficiency also directly reduces the pressure on grid infrastructure. So it reduces investment costs, it reduces peak loads. And the problem is that despite, this is very clear to all of us, we have been very, very slowly progressing. And there are many reasons, I don't have the time to speak about that, but for example, one is buildings. So buildings are very old, inefficient, and it takes time to refurbish them, but there are others. Speaking about barriers, so we have other technical barriers associated to a resilient energy system. Of course, one is grid congestion. So we have grid congestions in different levels, in two different levels. So we have grid congestion in the interconnections, for example, between countries or regions, but we also have grid connection in the distribution systems. For example, when sometimes we want to propagate electricity from renewables. Well, digitalization is very important to manage this. Digitalization is the key to make this flow and organize this, but of course it brings risks of cybersecurity. There is resistance from incumbent fossil fuel suppliers, and if we don't work this properly, there might be a risk of blackout and cascading failures if integration is not accompanied by adequate system controls. Now, do we have grid congestion? Well, let me say something which is very clear. The motivation to have power transmission across an interconnection is because it is cheaper in one place than in the other, its price. And then it's driven by profit. So it is very clear that if there is a big difference between prices from two regions, it's because there is a problem with the interconnection mostly. So, and this is a great proxy for evaluating the efficiency or the insufficiency of the grid connections. Then flexibility was the other vector. Well, as I said, buildings can be an active participant in the energy system. They can enhance grid flexibility. For example, if there is sun, I can take energy, electricity from the sun. I can have a storage of heat in the building, and then during the night or whenever I can use that heat. So in a certain way, in a very simplistic way, I can get electricity and store it in the form of heat, and the buildings can do it very well. Transport electrification opens another opportunity for bringing electricity, consuming electricity and delivering it to the system when it's necessary, and demand response. Demand response is, for example, we or the industry having an incentive to consume electricity when it is more available from renewable energy. But this means that we need to have the electricity cheaper in that moment and not an average price of electricity, which doesn't allow for this. To this we call time of use tariffs, and of course we need to have smart grids and so on. So these are the elements that in this study produced by EASAC are prioritized. But we all have also different barriers, more institutional and social. So we have systems, regulation systems that have been designed for the former system, which was very much top-down and largely fossil fuel energy systems. We have sometimes unfair cost-benefit distribution that risks creating opposition and political resistance that delays progress. And this is, of course, very important. An investor needs to have confidence that direction is there all the time. Otherwise, they do not invest. So the key message here is that to build resilience, we need institutions, investors, and communities to adapt together. And of course, they need to adapt together in time and in space as well, so we cannot have the risk of phasing out. Well, to engage citizens, a just transition is a prerequisite for energy transition. Accessible knowledge and information on how systems and markets work and on energy system integration, what does it mean, is essential, so that people understand they are part of it and they can benefit from it. More vulnerable consumers need support. It's always important to take good care of these. Acceptability depends on understanding the context. We need to be conscious that reducing administrative burdens and shortening permitting procedures should not be an excuse to cut out meaningful citizens' consultation. And it's evident that all of this is important because public engagement improves the acceptance of infrastructure which is needed for energy security. All of us are aware about this. For example, in Portugal, we need to increase the high voltage power lines, but nobody wants to have a power line in their yard. So, and this extends beyond, so people need to understand this better. So, almost finalizing, to say that these EASAC recommendations are on 7 areas, which is basically a summary of what I've just said. So, prioritize energy efficiency first, protect ICT and enhance cybersecurity, incentivize heat and electricity storage and demand response, foster cross-border interconnections, enable time of use tariff and demand response, support and engage cities and communities, and promote, support Commission independent monitoring. So, as really the conclusion, integrating renewable energy sources and modernizing the grid infrastructure can and is enabling a faster decarbonization, but also it reduces dependence on volatile fuel markets, alleviate grid congestion, and lower energy costs for everyone. That's contributing to resilience. Well, the energy system integration is also a precondition for successful delivering the EU Clean Industrial Deal, and integrated energy systems are not only more sustainable and cost-effective, but they are also better equipped to manage future energy security challenges and this is why this is, of course, very relevant to promote resilience. So I think this ends my brief report on how the summary from EASAC on energy system integrations contributes to this very important topic of resilience of energy systems. Thank you very much.